What is something you did when you were younger that you are still facing the consequences of? I was working 40 hours a week while still in high school. After 6 months of non-stop work, I fell asleep behind the wheel and I lost my leg. Loud concerts. No earplugs. It's a go-to for us to bring those cheap squishy earplugs for concerts now, especially hip-hop electronic concerts with fat subs. It straight up weirdly works like an egg where the music actually sounds better and more audible. Instruments get way more clear, and for some odd reason it is easier to hear what people around you are saying. People may look twice, but it saves your ears on top of all that. Not taking care of my teeth, and not learning how to budget. Now I'm broke with duct teeth. Similar to that, I didn't wear my retainer. My parents spent thousands on braces, and I was too young to think about the consequences of not keeping up with my retainer. I'm now looking into getting Invisalign to put them back when I already had straight teeth. I was also too young. I recall being in 5th grade, 32 now, and being out to eat with one of my friends and their parents. Next thing you know, her dad is digging through a McDonald's garbage can, sitting on the floor, trash everywhere and separated, just to help find the retainer, the one before braces. Never wore the one after that, was slyly wrapped in a napkin. He found it 20 minutes later. That man never liked me, but he'll never forget that. I had a tree house that was about 10 feet off the ground and I would regularly jump out of it. Being an idiot, I wouldn't brace myself when I landed because I thought I looked cooler doing it that way. Just straight up land on my feet without so much as bending my knees. Well, guess who's got shit knees before they've hit 30? For anyone who doesn't know how to land safely from heights, bend your knees when you hit the ground so you go into a crouched golem position. Slap the floor with both hands. Take some of the force away. If you have forward momentum you need to deal with, tuck your head and roll diagonally over one shoulder. Throw one hand under the opposite armpit to get the right angle. Source: former parkour nerd. Does this work from steep angles of descent? I tried this as a kid and it was hard to get into the roll. I did the bending of the knees, but all that ended up happening was me slamming my knees and hands into the ground and nearly smashing my face in the process. Yeah, it can take a bit of practice, but it works from all kinds of angles. Your knees shouldn't touch the ground when you land in the crouch. They should be pointing upwards. It might be harder for kids to do than adults. I don't know. I should add that it's not like you don't feel anything when you do it. If you take a big beefy drop onto concrete you're gonna feel it, whether you do the right technique or not. But it can be the difference between oof, okay I'm fine, and I just broke my legs. Getting the roll is generally for when you feel like you're gonna tip forwards out of the landing and land on your face. If you feel that happening, you just curl up and roll it out. Edit to add that the hand slap when you come down really does need to be a slap. You have to try to smack the floor away from you with both hands. Otherwise you're likely to come down like a sack of potatoes. Flew off a water slide while goofing off. Landed on concrete. Left hip still hurts. To sleep on 20-ish years later. It took at least 10 years before I told my mom what happened. When I was about 11 or 12 I had a cold, and as a child I'd had otitis a few times. It was winter, and I was outside without anything covering my head and ears. My mum told me to put something on otherwise I would get otitis again. I didn't. That night I woke up with unbelievable pain in my left ear. I was awake all night, crying from the pain. Tried to sneak out of bed to find painkillers, but whatever it was that I found, it did not help. Eventually the pain went away, but so did parts of my hearing. Never told my mum about it. Still have hearing loss on my left ear. My sister had chronic otitis as a child. So did I. But my mother thought that I was just seeking attention because my sister had it. Because mine was ignored. I developed a cholesteatoma, had 2 ossicular reconstructions, and have partial hearing loss. Yeah. I just wanted attention. This is incredibly relatable, but less ears more knees. I would feel faint a lot whenever it was hot outside, and I stopped being able to breathe as easily. My pacer test went from 60 to barely 15 for reference in 1 trimester. But everyone thought it entered the age of girls don't want to run and ignored it. Same a couple months later in track when my knees hurt a lot, where I was told to stop looking for special treatment. Turns out I'm heat sensitive and prone to heat exhaustion. Have mild asthma. And had a minor joint condition from rough housing that my dad even had in college and had to take a break from his sport that turned into a chronic issue, and now my knees sometimes decide to just not work. LOL. I was totally just looking for special treatment and not just trying to find explanation for why I was different. Though I guess to be fair, as a young child I'd commonly cry a lot to get my way. LOL. I sprained my ankle on a treadmill when I was 13 and I was too stubborn to let it heal properly. So now, nearly 15 years later, I can't walk until like 10 in the morning a couple times a month because my ankle is still a wee bit ducked. I broke my ankle and stretched the tendons badly skateboarding when I was 16. My dad told me to deal with it and didn't take me to any hospital or doctor to check it out. I kept it wrapped and followed protocol I found on the internet. As an adult I now have terrible pains in my ankle whenever I'm walking too much or working too hard. Got it looked at around 27 and I have a piece of my ankle bone missing. Probably cold views that medical attention. Dat. Not stand up for myself enough. Catching up and learning it as an adult is embarrassing at times. I was a shy awkward girl that willingly accepted whatever happened. Unfortunately my parents didn't help as they would always bag my sister for speaking up, which caused me to hide even further into my shell. You never realize how much can be taken away from you or taken advantage of you until you hit your ultimate limit. It's a price that can last for years. Overeat and eat poorly. Please teach and demonstrate nutrition and exercise to your kids. It is so ducking hard to defeat a lifetime of bad habits when you're in your adulthood and already feeling the effects of ill health from years of bad eating habits. And no, I don't just mean force them to eat their veggies and thus just create a totally negative relationship with healthy food. You have to find ways to make their importance clear and introduce new ways of eating healthy. Don't just feed a kid whatever they want whenever they want. I see that so much and the end result is not good. To add to this, don't make your kid eat more than they want to, as long as they are eating nutritious stuff. Don't force them to finish their plate. I grew up somewhat poor, so if we ever went out to eat, I'd get in so much trouble if I didn't eat everything I ordered. We paid for all this food. Now we have to eat it. Or next time you have to split a meal with your brother. Stuff like that. So I've grown up with some weird positive feedback loop of overeating. I get a good dopamine bump from eating myself to too full and then continuing. It's hard to maintain a healthy weight. A constant battle. It really wasn't until I was an adult when I started taking a doggy back home from restaurants. My wife opened my eyes to that. Yeah, we paid for it and we are gonna eat it, but later. We don't need to cram it down right now. Yup. Finishing the plate is a big one. Also receiving praise for how much you can eat. Not to say you should demean someone for how much they can eat, but don't praise it. Those are two of the big reasons I have struggled with disordered eating my whole life. As a kid, I always had to finish my plate. I also received a lot of praise for my ability to eat large amounts of food. This incentivized me to eat as much as I could, even if I was already full. Now I'm older, and I still finish my big plates, even if I'm full or I don't like the food. The biggest one though would be to show your kids outlets of relieving stress that aren't food. That's what creates a food addiction. You eat to escape the world, probably because food was always the reward when I was growing up. Overspending. Got a credit card as soon as I turned 18. It had a limit of $5,000 and I was not financially responsible. Cut a long story short, more credit cards. Horrible cycle of debt. Had to dig myself out of it. I got out of debt at 32. Lived paycheck to paycheck for a while. I'm 37 now, and this year is first year of my life I have savings. If anyone out there has crippling debt, don't feel hopeless. There's always a way out. Even if it takes years, you can do it. Gave my legs for a stranger's life during a 16 carpal loop. 8 years and 17 surgeries later, I can kinda walk again. My life is in complete shambles. I've gained 100 pounds. And I lost my career. A really ducking good one. Edit lots of questions for the story. Here it is. We were car number 3 of 16. Saw car 2 spinning before we got rear-ended. Saw car 2 feet's driver ejected. He landed in the open road. When we crashed I jumped out, got to the body, and moved him. The car that would have ground him into paste ended up hitting me going about 55 miles per hour. I was airborne for about 38 feet before landing on another car. 38 non-union brakes, over 100 fractures, lost my left thumb, and my right anterior tibialis. I also tore all 4 rotator cuff muscles in my right shoulder. Was 2 years before they fixed the shoulder because the legs were really bad. Both of my femur and tibia have all had titanium rods in them that run the entire length of the bone. I've had 2 external fixators remember Gattaca on my left leg. One for 9 months. One for 6. I still can't run or jump at all. And I live in perpetual pain because I had so many surgeries. I also developed a dependence on opioids. The constipation was so bad that I needed another surgery on my asshole to put it back together. Had a drug problem. Got clean at 21, roughly 10 years ago. Looking to get a government engineering job, but the government has different ideas on it. It seems unlikely I will be able to get a security clearance. I don't want to complain though, because I know plenty of other people who still have their drug problems. I know I'm just lucky to have been able to get on with my life. Anyway kids, I suggest going to therapy instead of doing drugs. After finishing college, I stopped playing sports. I've always been a bit on the stockier side, but through high school and college I was very active in several team sports: soccer, volleyball, floor hockey, so I had a lot of muscle on me too. I didn't do any kind of exercise beyond just moving around for work, walking my dog twice a day for 12 long years. I grew fat, unhealthy, and in poor shape. I've been trying to work on that. But even when I could go to the gym I would be exhausted after 30 minutes of light exercise. I have hopes that I can at least be healthy as I work to build up my endurance and tolerance for longer workouts. But I doubt I'll ever be in the shape I was when I was in my teens, early 20s. And it's entirely my fault too. I got lazy, and I'll be paying for it for the rest of my life. Edit. Thank you for all of the encouraging words. It's especially helpful to hear that I'm not the only one going through the same problem, and that others have come out on the other side of it. My first goal is to get down to 250. Then I'm going to do 25-pound goals after that until I at least get to my college weight 175. And see where to go from there. I'm working with a doctor on diet and such. It just feels like so much because I've let it go for so long. I couldn't stop lying about things I had done because I was so worried people would lose interest in me if I didn't seem super interesting. Until I lost track of my lies and couldn't stop. I ended up burning bridges with a lot of awesome people that I may have been great friends with, who we shared so many commonalities, awesome personalities, people I genuinely liked. I literally have no friends now and have trouble even being able to hold conversations with anyone anymore. I did it to myself, and I regret it so much that I have dreams about things turning out differently all the time. It sucks. And if I could go back in time, I'd grab younger me's tongue immediately and tell me people liked me and wanted to be my friend. Even if I felt like I was boring or not pretty enough. I'm glad I said this. Finally, I had to say it somewhere. It's been driving me crazy when it finally hit me how deep and insane it had gone. I got into the car of a couple that saw me walking home from school and offered me a ride home. Instead of driving me home, they took me to their house, where they beat me for putting up a fight when they were about to assault me and raped me. I'm still struggling alone mentally and don't trust anybody. I was sexually assaulted as a child and living with PTSD for just about 20 years before I started the process of healing. It is not too late. The world is catching up to the complexities of trauma. I'd be glad to share some very modest guidance with you if you'd welcome that. If so, you can DM me. The nervous system can learn and unlearn. Gave up on everything when I was in college. Stopped going to school. Slacked at work. Did nothing in my free time. I was living a day at a time with no plans for the future because I had no hope that life would get better. Now I'm here looking back at how things could have been different if I had a different mindset back then. These days I'm doing my best to do the things I should have done then, so the next time I reflect on the past 10 years I can feel pride instead of shame. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.